right. Well, the time that we have all waited for has finally come because we get to talk about this so that then we can forget it for the rest of our lives. I prefaced earlier in this program with my thoughts on this pay-per-view event. Brian, while I preface this again, can you look up and see what was on the hour and a half long pre-show that we didn't see? Before this 4 hour and 32-minute pay-per-view that we did see. And I got to give it to the people in Las Vegas or wherever they came from, wherever they converged upon the poor city of Las Vegas, Sin City, from whatever points they came from. They lapped this shit up. They loved a lot of it. Then they sat slack-jawed and watched some other parts of it, but they stayed to the end just for endurance alone. You got to give the crowd something, because how do you sit through 6 straight hours of car wrecks and chaos and mayhem involving people in a lot of cases you obviously don't give a shit about because you don't peep when they come out, but when they nearly die, you react. How can you sit through this for 6 fucking hours?
And they were real hot early. And again, they had some good action. But, you know, you brought it up with WWE before. If you're screaming nonstop, eventually that stops. I mean, we never saw a Beatles concert at the height of Beatlemania go longer than like a half hour, 45 minutes. And then they
didn't need to. They didn't need to.
And they were gone, and no one heard them anyway. And here, you know, the fans were really hot and really into it. This is an AEW audience. They drew a nice house, but they fucking blew their load within the first hour, and then they just didn't want to leave and go home to their wife.
But now hold on. Then they still, good point there. But if it's Danielson at the end of the show, they were still reacting to shit, and they reacted to near death of anybody, because I think that's what it's a race car audience now. They want to see somebody hit the wall. But if it's a personality that they really like and respect, they will still react to things that they do. But otherwise, they just want to see the meaningless video game shit. And that's what limits them to not only this audience that they've got right now, but probably less in the future. Because how many times can you see people literally almost die, be set on fire, and then be injured and be out of action? What are you following this shit with? It's insane. So
they never follow it with story. They never follow it with good story as part of the problem. So people like the matches. People want to see the car crash of the Anarchy in the arena match, no matter who's in it. They just want to see that shit show.
Yes, and you can only show people so much shit before they need some new shit to look at. And where are you going to go?
You asked about the pre-show, or the buy-in as they call it. I actually did see these matches. I had them on mute, but I had them on in the background. Deonna Purrazzo defeated Thunder Rosa 10 minutes and 15 seconds. And the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn defeated the Cage of Agony, which I guess is what they call it when Brian Cage teams up with the Gates of Agony.
Oh, God.
11 minutes, 45 seconds. I saw Max Caster's promo. He grew a mustache, and he now calls himself the greatest wrestler of all time.
Okay, good babyface moves there, both of them.
And that was the buy-in. That was the thing.
Well, how did they make that last an hour and a half?
Well, no, there was also a lot of Renee and RJ and Jeff Jarrett in a panel, or on a panel, discussing how great the event was going to be. They were the Todd Pettengill and Stephanie Wyand and Jeff Jarrett of AEW.
All right, well, then the first official match on the actual pay-per-view was the National Intercontinental Drift Championship, where Will Ostrich gets to beat Roddy Strong so he can have a belt now, because they spent a lot of money on Will, so he's got to have a belt. And Don Fallis was on color. And again, you can't... They worked hard. Roderick Strong might be the best in-ring guy on the roster, just performing wrestling, but his booking And the people love Will. And that's going to happen until the booking makes it too confusing, if it's not already, for him to draw any kind of money. You got the top heel manager on color, Don Fallis, but he's managing, or usually manages, or is supposed to be the manager of the babyface. And he's wondering why the heel seconds, Taven and Bennett, are allowed to be at ringside for Roddy, who's the heel in this match. And they still have never explained any of this. Why is it happening? The opening move, they almost killed Ostrich, because they go to fight, first match of the night. They go to fight on the floor within minutes, seconds. And then suddenly they just draw the referee, and Taven and Bennett jump in, and they get Will up on, I guess it was Bennett's shoulders, and Taven rolls in the ring and hits the ropes next to the referee, whose back is turned, and then dives, or tries to dive, over the top rope. They were going to give Will the Road Warriors Doomsday device as an interference spot over the top rope on the floor. But Taven got stuck on the top rope and came short. Ostrich went with the bump like he was going to take it anyway, so he managed to give himself the move, and because it was all fucked up, he landed on his fucking face, head and face, on the floor.
And you knew he landed in that general area, but you weren't exactly sure because the way it was shot, it wasn't a clear view of him hitting the ground. So you didn't know how fucked up his neck could be.
Well, the announcers in front of him, Tony, exclaimed like he thought that he had just broken his neck. And then it said, I thought he just broke his neck.
Which is what made me think he was fine, as soon as I heard Shivani say that.
Well, I thought he just broke his neck. It was close. What the fuck? Why would you do that for an interference spot? Why was he supposed to get back up and win the match? What the fuck?
Again, a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the match, however early it was the beginning of the match.
Yes. And then they have some more match, and then Taven and Bennett draw the referee again, and Wardlow comes in and grabs Will and is going to give him a power bomb. And the referee turned around and saw him about to pick him up and just stopped him and told him, you got to leave. That's not a DQ. For once, this wasn't even a no DQ match. So then when he kicks the fucking Wardlow out, and the referee's going to eject all the heels, and it gives Ostrich an excuse to dive off the top rope and do a spinning pike position thing on everybody. And then they started having a match again. And then it was like two video game characters where they would just do big moves, and nobody would sell anything. It looked good, it looked athletic, but nobody was registering anything for more than 5 seconds, and it just went back and forth with no logical continuity. And then they had the first of the match, they had the big floor fight. Then they almost killed the guy with the Stooges' interference, and then later in the match, they were doing rope breaks. So, big strikes and kicks back and forth, nobody bumped. And then, while Roddy was upset, Roddy was having the referee check him for some reason, because he was down and had taken a bump. Suddenly, he's finally selling. And Will was upset for some reason that the guy that he had been trying to kick the shit out of for 20 minutes is now down and injured. And then Don was telling Will to use the Tiger Driver on him. Why wouldn't he just go over and try to cover him, since the referee is trying to determine whether he's still conscious or not?
Because this is a new version of the sympathetic babyface like Adam Page.
Oh,
Will Osprey is a killer. He's a grinder. He's someone who goes out there and gets it. However, he also fears for the mortality of his opponent.
Well, while Don's telling him to use the Tiger Driver, Will goes over and grabs him in it, but he won't pick him up and do it. So suddenly, Roddy, who was unconscious and being checked to whether he could continue after he was picked up and grabbed in this hold, suddenly gave Will 3 big moves at 100 miles an hour, got a 2 count. And I wrote, this is ridiculous. And then instantly Ostrich is back at 100%. And he hits 2 moves on Roddy, 1, 2, 3. It was a mess. They worked hard. They hit each other hard. Will almost died, but it was a mess of a match. No psychology, no continuity, no what the fuck? It looked like a video game. It was the shits. And this was one of the better matches.
I thought it was the best match on the show, actually.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. Again, they did everything. They kicked out of everything. They sold nothing, including apparent decapitation. But for, I guess, that kind of match, this is a great main event match. It just so happens it was the opening match. And the crowd was never as hot as they were for this and the thing after it the rest of the night. They had moments, but in terms of consistently just being up for something, so that says something about their energy early, but it may also say something about Osprey. Osprey's connecting. Whatever you think about his work, he's connecting with those fans on his promos and his attitude and everything else.
Then why won't Tony help him?
Because he doesn't know how to, and he doesn't want to admit that he doesn't know how to. It's the same problem that always
Don
happens.
Callis has to know that this is dreck. He's been in the business 25 years. Why is he managing this guy? Why did he fight all of Don's other guys and then it go nowhere? Why is any of this taking place? He's a baby face. Make him a baby face. Get him away from the manager. What the fuck is going on?
Best match of the night.
It certainly was. So then, suddenly, Adam Cole's music played. And he walked to the ring, not looking any heavier or any tanner. And he wears jeans so tight that you can tell that his legs look like chicken wings without steroids or growth hormones. I mean, for the chickens. You know where it says cage-free, no steroids, no growth hormones?
I prefer chickens that die of old age.
Well, you're getting a goddamn skinny-ass fucking scrawny wing is what you're getting. And he did a heel interview, and he held up the devil's mask, and he promised when he was 100%, they're going to have to give the devil his due. So they're not going to even let people forget about that fiasco. And how disappointed they were when it was resolved. Go ahead.
I think this was their way of getting past that entire thing. As opposed to ignoring it, it was blowing it off in one thing. And as soon as he pulled out the devil mask, or the devil's mask, I guess, it was pretty obvious what was about to happen.
Well, I know that they blew it off whether they know it or not at the end of this. I don't trust Tony to know that they did. But they have a blackout. And then a video pops up, which apparently was, I guess, MJF's trophy room in some rented home somewhere, because it looked like there was only the things that they'd specifically put in there to show on camera that could show that anyone lived there. And the lights came back on and MJF's music played, and he came out and got a big pop. And they chanted MJF, and they chanted holy shit. And then when Adam Cole was quivering and shaking, they chanted at him, "You fucked up." And they did the deal where they had the face off, and Adam Cole wanted a hug. And MJF's like, "Hey, you got to be kidding me." But then he thinks about it, and then he hugs Adam Cole, and then he kicks him in the balls and gives him a brain buster. And then MJF takes the microphone, and he cuts a little promo over the top of Adam Cole, and he says, "Somebody get this shit stain out of my ring." He's using our material here.
Is that an issue? Is that a trademark issue for you?
And no, I'll let him have it because this whole show deserves that designation. And then the security helped Adam Cole out. So if they felt like just to tie the story up, even though it's been almost 6 months, that they needed to have MJF drop Adam Cole on his head and have him carried out just to get even, okay. But I just wish that they hadn't had to remind anybody of this stuff.
Again, MJF's been off TV. We haven't seen Adam Cole on TV in a while either, and he's still healing, and reportedly he's still not cleared. Although he did take a bump here, so it really makes you wonder what's going on. But
he didn't. Here's the thing. He took a ball kick, which anybody can take, and he took a brain buster, which if it's given right, anybody can take. He didn't have to put any stress on the broken ankle or broken foot.
And MJF is relatively safe from what we...
Yes, he wasn't risking any kind of concussion there because it was MJF and he wasn't going to be stupid.
But we haven't seen him on TV, so they bring him out all of a sudden for this to blow it off.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, because Cole is obviously nowhere near ready, but they had to bring him back so that MJF could beat him up and drop him on his head and then take the devil mask and drop an elbow on it like Ric Flair. I wish Tony put this level of commitment into detail in any of his other stories. The shit that we want to forget about, it would be better if everybody just moved on past. He'll remind you all day long. But the shit that you might need to remind somebody about, that gets lost for months. But he did a great promo, MJF. He had good lines. I don't need a New Japan or a Vince McMahon to make MJF. MJF made MJF. And Adam Cole woke me up. And there's going to be no more ha-ha, no more friendship, kangaroo kicks, and bullshit. Not love, but hate, hate, hate. He was trying to promise a reset, what we've talked about for however long since this happened when they ruined him last year, that this smiling, happy MJF with the friends couldn't be sustained and it was a mistake and they were going to have to rectify it. And now they've come to that come to Jesus moment. The chickens have come home to roost, whatever the fuck. And he's basically... It was what Jerry Lawler got over as a heel in Memphis the first time so strong when he switched babyface, he was automatically over. But after a year of Lawler being babyface, then the people were like, but now he gets beat and he doesn't cheat as much because you have to be a babyface. So he would start cutting promos. The old king is coming back this Monday night. You're going to see the old Jerry, and he would throw fire at somebody, or he would do something heinous like the old Lawler would do, but he'd do it to the heel that deserved it. This is kind of a magnified example of that, where MJF has had to reset himself because of the way they tore him down on television. And now he's had a break, and if he gets away from this, and maybe he's gotten his new deal that he can call his own shots, because if Tony gets a hold of him again, you can't do unlimited resets, but this one might work. But, when he said it's not my fault that all your favorites compared to me suck a big old bag of donkey dicks, the people chanted donkey dicks. And then finally he said, well, my contract status, and he showed on his leg, on his calf, a new AEW tattoo and a poker chip with AEW on it saying, always bet on yourself. But, of course, it is also in a place that will be covered anytime he wears a wrestling boot, so when he goes to the WWE, he doesn't have to worry about it. And he said, I'm not fucking leaving. So he's done this to himself.
I don't know. The idea of a reset is doing a reset is different than coming out and announcing it. Actually just coming out there and being, the classic MJF or a new version of MJF is different than saying, all right, enough of everything you've seen for the last year. Now everything is going to go back to the way it used to be. we'll see. They need him.
Yeah.
More than ever. They need him. And traditionally, he is someone who moves numbers. Pay-per-view buys, TV ratings, even merch when they turned him babyface finally. So everything he does has succeeded for them. It's a smaller audience. The audience is not willing to give AEW the benefit of the doubt as much anymore. But they really needed him here. Again, the tattoo thing, it's interesting. Who said bet on yourself? Was that what Triple H said to Cody? Is that what the story is?
I didn't even delve that deep in it. I just thought he was telling Tony Khan, hey, look, I got your fucking company name tattooed on my leg.
Well, I think that is what it is. And again, what a heel move when he exposes it again in 5 years and all of a sudden it's a different logo there. I mean, it'll happen. At least it wasn't on his neck, on the bright side. At least he didn't put it on his neck. You see, he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
But, everyone's happy he's going to be back and everyone's afraid he's going to get sucked into, we used to call it the Jericho vortex, but now it's just the vortex of Tony's booking. And
well, who's he going to work with to draw any money?
Him and Osprey is something I would be very interested in seeing. I don't know if I'm really that into him and Swerve right now. I'm not into Swerve and anyone right now. They've killed my enthusiasm for Swerve. He's a heel again. Him and Moxley done.
He is?
MJF?
Oh, I thought you meant Swerve.
No, MJF's a heel again. So other baby faces. Moxley's kind of a baby
well,
face.
He's a heel again that can get the people to chant donkey dicks. So again, here's going to be another popular heel.
But again, the other problem is, who is the promo for? Again, that's a rabid AEW audience there, and the pay-per-view audience is smaller than the amount of people watching the TV show, just because that's how pay-per-view works. But this is like almost a promo for a smart audience. I'm not going anywhere. The average person just knows he was on that show and he was off that show.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about any of this stuff. So it's another AEW rah-rah speech hidden in the middle of a promo. They're always looking like they're on the defensive. Even here, where MJF had to Bobby Ewing the last year, where he had to come out and denounce everything. He had to do the Ric Flair beating up his outfit. He started elbow dropping the mask.
He was trying very hard to convince people that the shitty way that they saw him presented the last time he was there was a thing of the past. And he knew he was talking to the smartest audience because that's who's going to get the pay-per-view and the most diehard audience. And they're the ones that they probably did the most damage to MJF in front of by the way he was presented. Silly and stupid. We shall see.
Yeah, because he's now going to be a heel in a company with Jericho doing his disingenuous heel act, the Bucks doing their disingenuous heel act, the House of Black doing their magic act. Look at the other heels in that company and then try to figure out what baby faces he's going to work with.
Well, but Ostrich is still a heel because he's managed in the heel group of the top heel manager. He's just popular. Swerve still has a manager and was a baby violating heel, but they just liked him. So now MJF is going to be one of the heels they like rather than one of the heels they're fucking bored by.
They'll probably give us a starter feud. That's what they did after the last time he had to kind of denounce his last year, after the Jericho feud. You're right. It started with Pillman Jr. and then Darby. Like it kept growing from there. He won't start with an Osprey. He'll have to work to get there, one or two feuds. He'll probably take someone on the roster and try to elevate him first. If I had to guess based on track record, that's what I would guess.
Well, boy, you'd need a lot of helium to elevate some of these son of a bitches.
Action Andretti.
So the next match on this program was a 6-man tag with the Gun Boys and Light Switch White against Pac and Penthouse and Felix. And I'm sorry. This was 6 guys doing tumbling and flips and 6 ways and sloppy shit. And I was having problems with the fast forward, as you know, anyway. And I was just seeing this unending repetitive horse shit. So I will say that the Gun Boys work their asses off and have a lot of potential and should have a WWE future unless somehow their father may have pissed them off. If they got to get away from here and these sloppy assholes they have to work with, or they're never going to get any better. And that's and Juice came out and interfered, and the heels won. So at least Juice is back. Did I miss anything here?
Well, Osprey had a good long match. It was like 20-something minutes. The MJF return went a little while. So that's like 2 matches in a row. It was time for a weed break. So
there you go.
I missed the start of this, but I saw the Juice return, which, again, it was 2 big returns back to back. MJF and Juice.
3, Cole.
Was it Cole's return, or was it a one-off thing to blow off the feud, is what I'm wondering.
Well, but he returned, because the definition of a return is you've been gone, motherfucker. Now I haven't seen you in a while.
It was just like his debut, where they had him come out, and then like 2 minutes later, Danielson came out. You forgot all about his debut. What are we talking about here? Juice is back.
Yeah, Juice is back. The Juice is back, baby.
I wish they would separate him from this and just use him as they have no one as a single. Everyone is part of a clique or a group or a faction. This has been a problem forever, but especially now, where no one's a defined babyface or heel. They need just singles wrestlers going after one of the 35 singles championships.
Well, continuing on, because there's a lot more. Serena Deeb and Toni Storm. Did you watch past the part where Serena Deeb had tied Toni Storm up with her in a ball with her arms, her own arms and her own legs were intertwined, and left her alone, and she was acting like she couldn't get out?
And she's the babyface.
Because Serena outlasted a near career life-threatening medical situation and came back to be the heel against this fucking batshit crazy girl with goddamn a manager and another stooge along with her. She's the babyface.
Serena gave her flag or whatever it was to some kid at ringside at the start of the match. That's what a babyface does.
Yeah. She's giving kids presents, but then I don't fucking, God damn it. Toni Storm hit a pile driver off the second rope on her and then didn't even cover her. Picked her up again and gave her a regular pile driver and then covered her 1, 2, 3. Isn't that the textbook definition of following a shooting with a stabbing?
Well, she's very thorough. Like any good killer.
She gave her a pile driver off the second rope and then didn't even cover her. Just picks her up and pile drives her. It's girls. It's fucking girls.
So what? I mean, look, we already saw this with the girls. We saw Orange Cassidy sell a pile driver on the steel steps a couple weeks ago.
Are you trying to say Orange Cassidy is a girl? Because, guy, you've just turned me off of women.
My point is, after Tony brought up that the pile driver is a dastardly move, no one has sold a pile driver, no matter where in the building it is, in weeks, let alone maybe ever in AEW.
Well, by cracky, Tony's still the champion of one of the girls' divisions here, or whatever the fuck. And then...
What happens to the TBS title and the TNT title if they leave Warner Brothers?
Well, then they change their name. And then, but is one of them still for the girls and one of them for the guys? Who's going to be the YouTube champion when Warner Brothers don't want to give them the money they want? They want to give them less instead of what they've been getting, and Tony gets his panties in a wads, and we'll just do our own show on YouTube.
They already have a YouTube champion. It's called the Ring of Honor champion.
Well, there you go. That's going to be the most valuable guy in the company. So anyway, then they had Trent versus Pockets, and I'm sorry. This is a 4.5-hour show. They ran over their pay-per-view window. They had a 4.5-hour pay-per-view window. They ran over that to the point where, as you mentioned to me before we went on the air, Brian, the replay afterwards on the pay-per-view channel started in the middle of the fucking Roddy match because they were into the next goddamn window of time. They had to join it in progress. They couldn't do this in 4.5 hours And they believed that anybody wanted to see Trent against Pockets on this thing.
You know, the big change in AEW was when Tony went from horizontal to vertical. Do you think maybe he should go to upside down?
I think he ought to go 6 feet under.
Oh, come on. See, now you took it too far. That's ladies and gentlemen, we're joking around.
3 feet then. Just 3 feet.
3 feet.
3 feet. A good hard rain will wash him into the creek.
What is...
So then...
Into the creek, so it's on your property that this is happening. Hold on now.
Well, it could be. Just put him on the side of the fucking hill somewhere.
You see they almost sold, almost sold. Because of some bullshit thing, Graceland was almost put up for auction last week.
Well, yes, and they're having a... You know, it's a problem there because not only is Elvis buried there, but also isn't Lisa Marie buried there, no, the wife, not Lisa Marie's still alive.
No, Lisa Marie's dead. Priscilla's still alive.
Well, goddamn, how did that happen?
That happened a while ago, but Lisa Marie's buried there.
Seems like it'd be the other way around, but the Lisa Marie's buried there, and I think Elvis's parents are buried there.
And Elvis's grandson, Lisa Marie's son, is buried there as well.
Well, and Priscilla's still kicking.
She's had a lot of surgery.
Boy, I tell you what, she may have done some voodoo too. But anyway, so you can't just sell people's grave sites, can you? How do you can you buy a cemetery and turn it into a goddamn strip mall?
Can you buy a cemetery and turn it into a museum? The Museum of Death.
Can you display? You can't display the bodies. You would have to.
No, of course not. That's just sick.
Well, that's just sick. Who would ever come up with something like that? Anyway, for the FTW title, it was Hook versus Shapoopy versus Jericho. And within the first 2 minutes of the match, Hook was pulling out a table. They've learned nothing from Eddie Kingston, as we'll get to in a second. Eddie Kingston on a fucking stupid New Japan show in front of a few thousand people takes a suplex on a table and breaks his leg and blows his knee. And so they decided, oh, it's a good idea. We'll have 15 people go through 15 tables on this show. Why was Shapoopy even in this?
Why was he in this? Because he's part of the big mix now.
So Jericho pulled out a bag of dice and sprinkled them everywhere so they could suplex him over and over into them. And that can't be comfortable. And then they started throwing the dice at him, and they were bouncing off him into the crowd. You could hear them pegging the announcer's desk. Somebody could get their eye put out. If there were any smart individuals in this crowd, there would be a lawsuit for some kind of fucking lost vision in Las Vegas, for fuck's sake. Can you imagine going to see Cirque du Soleil and the trapeze artist tennis shoe flies off and hits you in the mush? And then they got kendo sticks and beat on Jericho. I wrote, why am I watching this garbage? Shapoopy pulled out a table and put it in the ring. There's 2 hours and 45 minutes left in this fucking fiasco, and I zipped ahead to the finish, which was that Hook got a choke on Jericho and Big Bill saved and got on Hook in front of referee Aubrey Ed, who was helpless as usual because it's no DQ. And then Hook suplexed Big Bill off the apron of the ring, threw a table on the floor. And if Big Bill had landed with his head 6 inches to the right, the table legs would have impaled his face.
That was scary. I watched that several times, and someone put it on Twitter as a clip you could watch over and over again. I've never seen anyone land that close to being impaled.
Well, because the legs of the thing are not going to break. The legs, theoretically, if you hit it just right and the furniture decides to cooperate with you and you hit it in the middle, the legs spread out at the bottom. But in this case, they were a little bit farther over to one end. And the way it broke, the legs were standing up straight. And again, his face, it went right by him. about 6 inches. So it would have a certain brain damage, I would think, if nothing else. But he's fine. Anyway, so Jericho got the walls on Shapoopy, and Shapoopy turned it into almost a figure 4. But then Hook got the choke, and then a ninja jumped in the ring in black pants, black sweatshirt, black hood, with a garbage can, and beat up Shapoopy and beat up Hook both, and then unmasked. And it was Brian Keith, not the actor who played Uncle Bill in Family Affair, but the bounty hunter Brian Keith. And then Hook beat him up and shit-canned him, but Jericho put the garbage can over Hook's head and pinned him 1, 2, 3. And I wrote, this is almost makes me feel bad and embarrassed for Tony, because he's trying to fix what he's fucked up about the booking by doing twice as much of it. Every match on this show, completely overbooked, as the kids say. Too confusing, too much, too many twists, too many turns. If Tony is doing these finishes, he's an idiot. And if he's letting the wrestlers do these finishes, he's a bigger idiot, because they're sabotaging his company. Because if you let all these egotistical, think they're stars fucking assholes that ain't over and ain't smart do everything they want to do, this is what you end up with, and you got nowhere to go.
Jericho's like if Randy the Ram had that Necro Butcher match, but it wasn't for money, it was just to prove himself to someone.
Yes. Except Mickey Rourke was in better physical condition when he shot that movie. So, and then we were 2 hours into this thing, and guess what happened then? It was the Plumber versus Take-A-Shit. And this wasn't for the IWGP title. This was if Take-A-Shit was to beat Moxley, he'd get a title shot, right?
It's Tony's favorite thing, and I don't think he realizes how counterproductive it is and how it's almost a turnoff at this point. The Eliminator match. You get to wrestle the champ. It's a non-title match where if you win, you get a title match. But it's called an Eliminator match, and it's been used so often that it means nothing as a term.
And besides that, we had something like it in Ring of Honor with a Proving Ground match, which there was an element of common sense to it, as if you were given a match against a recognized champion in the company, you didn't have to win. If you beat them, you would definitely get a title match, but if they couldn't beat you in 10 minutes, you'd get a title match. Then you've got something to prove, right? With this, it's just, well, if you just beat him, then why wouldn't you just give him a title match and let him win? Because it's fake, phony mark booking. I don't know. Anyway, this was more of what they usually do, except Moxley had his left arm taped up and tried to wrestle with one arm when he can't really wrestle with two arms. So
So that one arm became like an Incredible Hulk strength arm where he could just do anything with the one arm, even though he had the one arm taped up.
Well, yes. And again, it was his right arm. I'm sure his right arm is stronger than his left arm because that's one he jacks off with. And Moxley does dives. Why? I have no idea why. But finally, this is their finish. Take-A-Shit goes out and gets a couple of chairs out from under the ring and throws them into the ring. And the referee is Knox, the corpse ref, so he just calmly picks the chairs up and turns his back and puts them out the other side. But then, since they have to do more shit behind his back, and it didn't take him long enough, after he puts them out, then he starts pointing to the people he's giving them to, telling him what to do with them, right? And just turning his back. And Take-A-Shit slides in with a third chair, but Moxley jumps up and curb stomps him on the chair. while the referee is not turning around until Moxley slides the chair out, and then Moxley gets him in the double arm DDT, and the referee turns around 1, 2, 3. Did I miss anything about the burial, the booking malfeasance done against our boy Takeshita, who now literally is just mired into shit?
I really liked Takeshita, and I can't say I was looking forward to seeing the match. I was looking forward to seeing him wrestle, but it turns into a Moxley match, and his matches are terrible. You can call the spots right now for whatever the next match will be. He is the worst wrestler in the world. It's amazing. There are some people that really think he's good. I go into every one of his matches thinking, let me try to have an open mind. Let me try to see it. And every time I'm like, this guy sucks. So yeah, Moxley sucks. Takeshita's being wasted. You can understand why he's doing promos or doing interviews in the Japanese press, talking about not liking his experience in America so far.
I don't blame him. But speaking of not liking someone's experience, now we get to the part of the program where they've done it again. They've managed to hospitalize one of their top names for the TNT title match. And what they said was going to be a barbed wire cage. It turned out to be a cage, like a regular cage, but with barbed wire wrapped around certain parts of it. And for some reason, they started the match with 2 tables and 2 chairs laying in the ring inside the cage between Edge and Malachi Black. I was trying to zip through the entrances to get some of this thing over with. Did they ever explain why furniture was laying in the ring?
Just to save time, so the guys didn't have to go into the ring and get it themselves.
All right. Well, within the first 2 minutes, Edge had opened Malachi Black up with barbed wire, and they had used the chairs to whack each other with the chairs, and then they ignored them. Here's the thing. Edge is a great person. He's a great guy and a great talent. He's had a wonderful career. He can work, he can talk, but he's not either setting an example or teaching any of these guys anything. When he, instead of teaching them what not to do and giving them matches with him that, whether he puts them over or not, that elevate them in the ring and their talent and teach some kind of timing and experience or whatever, he's just doing the same stupid shit that they're doing. But he's 50 years old, and he's giving them the idea that this is shit that they ought to fucking be doing. And a 50-year-old Hall of Fame talent doing garbage matches in a vanity project promotion is sad whether he means well or not. But nobody is gonna, what did he teach anybody here? How to break your own leg. Because that's what he did. But first, they had a garbage match. Malachi Black gets a barbed wire wrapped baseball bat. And instead of just drawing back and hitting him with the fucking thing and winning the match 1, 2, 3, he takes a baseball bat and rakes the barbed wire across Edge's head. And then Edge gets the bat and hits him with a gut shot, at least, but then a supposed headshot, and then he's raking the barbed wire across Malachi, and then he throws the bat away to set up a table. If you're fighting a guy and you're beating him with a bat, why would you throw the bat away to set up a table? And then he hit him with a chair and put him on the table and started climbing the cage. But Malachi Black got up after being hit several times with a baseball bat and crotched Edge. And then Malachi powerbombed Edge through a table off the top rope and got a 2 count. And so I fast forwarded some. And I stop again. And at this point, Edge has put Malachi Black on the table and tied him onto it with barbed wire so he couldn't move. And he climbed to the top of a 15-foot cage and came off with an elbow drop and broke his own leg and got a 2 count.
Well, you need to talk about the way he landed with that elbow drop. I mean, of all the ways I thought he was going to land when he did the leap, he landed in the worst possible. I didn't think he would land that way.
Well, yes, but he couldn't do a splash because the fucking idiot laying on the table had barbed wire on top of him. And what he was trying to do...
his plan was to jump off the top of the cage and land feet first?
His plan apparently was that he thought that he could jump off and land and put his feet under him enough to break some fall where he could fucking the elbow drop, where he'd only be risking his fucking arm instead of his whole goddamn body and face landing on the barbed wire. The elbow drop would still break the table, is what I got from it. He thought that somehow, he didn't mean to just jump 15 feet and land with most of his weight on his feet first and then. But the point being, he finished the match, and he's since revealed on Twitter and etc. that he broke it. What is the bone in the lower leg? The tibia. And yeah, and he's going to have surgery of some kind and blah, blah, blah. But in the meantime, the match is still going on. So then they went back and forth, and Malachi Black pulls a piece of the cage off and starts hitting Edge with it, knocks Edge through the cage door so they can go out on the floor. But then as they're on the floor and Edge has speared Malachi Black, here come Brody King and Buddy. I started to say Brody King and Buddy Lee. Brody King and Buddy, what is his name? Matthews. And they stand next to Malachi Black like they're going to menace Edge, and then they both go and turn and stand next to Edge. And Malachi Black starts begging off like, oh, no, no. And then they turn around and beat up Edge.
What was that?
The fuck? Why is Edge standing there in the middle of it? Oh, you guys are going to join me all of a sudden? I've never dreamed.
I don't understand, because it happened so quick. And it teased a lot very quickly. And then they immediately turned on Edge. Why? See, that's the thing. You're looking at Edge like a veteran who should be teaching these guys, not like what he really is. And I don't mean this in a negative way. We're all fans. But he's a mark. He's a mark for... He said it in that promo where he came out defending AEW after the Punk thing. Where he said, I grew up in Canada seeing all sorts of wrestling. You gotta love all sorts of wrestling. He's that guy. And he wants to do all these bucket list things in there. And again,
yeah,
the booking, I mean, the Judgment Day turned on. Everyone turns on him. I mean, this guy can't get any, these guys turned on him after 30 seconds.
So then they threw him in the ring. And they threw more barbed wire in the ring, and they beat Edge up 3-on-1 while the referee stood there watching slack-jawed. And they put barbed wire around his head, so the crown of thorns type of thing for the religious imagery for those of you who give a shit about that kind of shit.
Yeah, for those of you up on Dark Side of the Ring where they just pointed out what a disaster this was in ECW with the Sandman and Raven. Here you go.
But then they never got that far because all of a sudden... music and red lighting and Gangrel came through the mat. Not only from underneath the ring, but through the mat and DDT'd the heels. And then when that was finished happening, Malachi Black kicked him in the fucking face and knocked him out. But then Edge speared Malachi Black and put the wire around Malachi Black's face and got kind of a cross face on him. And Malachi Black passed out, and I was ready to join him. Because we were 3 hours into this fucking thing, and it wasn't, the end was not in sight. But now Edge is going to be out for how many months is that going to be? For what? For
I don't know. I haven't seen a time frame. Have you?
No, but I mean, when you break your leg and you're 50 years old and you are a professional athlete, It's
and here's the other problem: TNT title. Are we now going to get an interim champion? Are we going to get another tournament? Are we going to get?
I'm thinking of Battle Royal.
You think Tony would go Battle Royal over tournament? He loves tournaments.
Well, we can't let the prestigious TNT title be vacant for too long.
But the thing is, everything's unnecessary nowadays, but it was an unnecessary spot. It didn't look good. I think if you thought it out well, you would think this won't look good. And then he hurts himself, and everyone hurts himself doing stupid stuff. We talked about everyone breaking their legs jumping into barricades. He broke his leg jumping he jumped off a cage with nothing to break his fall but his leg. And then he broke it.
Yes, not the fall, but the leg. That had to be 15 feet. Every bit. That was
a big cage. That was a big cage.
Well, think about this. That was higher than the scaffold match drop because the scaffold was 24 feet off the ground. 3 feet for the ring, there's 21 feet, and a grown adult hanging underneath it. That would put your feet at about 13 feet off the ground, right?
How old were you in 86?
25.
He's double that. Doing that.
And from farther.
Yeah.
But now let's not even do it like that because then people are going to, don't compare Cornette's athleticism at 25 with Edge's at 50. But neither one should have been doing it. But at least I had nowhere to go but up after I went down. He's got nowhere to go but down after he went down. Because his condition is not going to get better from here. Anyway. Would you like to move along?
Let's move along. There's a few more matches still. I think there's a triple main event to come.
Oh, boy. Mercedes Moan and Willow Nightingale finally popped up 3 hours into this fucking fiasco. And again, Mercedes, impress me. Show me why you're worth all that money. I'm going to try to watch this with an open mind, as you say. Every time I watch, Willow is the one who gets over with me. Willow is young, is obviously not as high-priced. Well, and I say young, it's not like Mercedes is a senior citizen, but she's been around a while in the business. Willow is young and new and fresh. She looks like she has some personality. Her work is pretty good. She's the one that gets over with me. And again, she's a full-fledged babyface, and Mercedes was working as a full-fledged heel, including running on the bicycle, staying away from Willow. But while I admit that Mercedes is not as bad in the ring as I thought she would be, given how bad her promos are, but to me, this was one of the ones where it looks like Willow is the one they ought to be trying to push, and Mercedes is the one that is there to get her over. But it was the other way around. What am I missing about Mercedes that is jaw-droppingly impressive?
She is good in the ring. Again, she is a smaller woman. But she's good in the ring, and she was presented as a star on WWE TV since they started presenting women seriously on that show. So she comes here with that star power. And
how is she good in the ring? I like the Meteora. It looks risky for both people. I don't know how I would give it or take it. So that's very nice.
But I don't see anything with her promos or anything else. I watched the scrum afterwards, and she's the CEO because she'll be sitting courtside at the Celtics game, and I don't think she could do a good promo, but she's popular.
But how about the work, the match? They did a spot where Mercedes shoved Statlander, and Statlander and Stokely were arguing with the referee, and Willow behind with no referee to count hit the doctor bomb, and finally referee gets a 2 count. Willow's finish there looked great. And then Mercedes gets Willow up on her back and goes for her finish, and they fell in a fucking heap together. No move was done, and then Mercedes covers her 1, 2, 3. she can't even hit her fucking finish. And then she celebrates with the belt and does a stripper dance while CEO chants play on the PA system. And then we're not done with the booking, because then Mercedes, the heel, leaves. And then Stokely, the heel manager of the babyface girl, is yelling at Willow. But Statlander, the babyface friend of the babyface champion, shoves down the heel manager. And Statlander goes to help Willow out of the ring and up the ramp, and then turns around and clotheslined her. And then did something else to her and left her laying and walked out with the guy that she just shoved on his ass before she helped the girl out so she could turn on her on the floor instead of in the ring. What?
Yeah, CEO is going to definitely be it already is the most annoying chant in wrestling. Swerve's house, or whose house, Swerve's house, over and over again is pretty annoying too. Everything's annoying me.
But what the overbookingness, everything. These are months of angles that could play out on television that are happening in every fucking match. What the fuck? It's like he just told everybody, go out and do your own shit. It doesn't matter if it fits with the rest of our program. Do as much or as little of anything as you might want.
Well, the other problem is we don't know what the hell's going on booking-wise in the world of kayfabe. Unless they've done stuff on other shows, Stokely was a heel manager that was on Ring of Honor that was all of a sudden with Statlander and Willow, who were friends, both from the island. And now he's the heel manager against Willow, who Statlander just turned on her.
Yeah. Okay. So 3.5 hours in, we now come to the AEW World Championship match with Christian Cage and his family of stooges challenging Swerve, and Prince Nana's back in his corner. So we got that going for us. And thankfully, they started slow, and they tried to do a little wrestling, and kudos to them for it. But the problem is, what can two guys with bare hands trying to have a wrestling match do 5 hours into this fiasco, right? So within a couple minutes, they're on the floor. And they can both work, and Cage won't let Swerve devolve into all the breakdancing and aggressive parkour that he does when he's with another person of that ilk. So Swerve was good here. But at this point, a legitimate wrestling match is out of place, because is it possible to seriously critique the acting in a single scene of a 6-hour German bukkake compilation? Even if about 4.5 hours in, you see a guy and the way he's talking, you're like, wow, I'd watch him on television. Does it really matter? How have you had the goddamn stamina to stay for that much, right? To begin to see it in the first place. They do different shit than what we've seen from the rest of this nights, and Christian is a good leader, and but again, they kind of got crazy. Swerve gave Christian a vertical suplex on the floor and started setting up stairs where they were going to do a stunt. And poor Paul Turner, the referee, is screaming, no, this isn't needed. And I thought, he's right. This is not needed. They had people at one point, and I'm thinking, just go into the fucking finish, right? But more fighting on the floor in the apron. And Christian tried to suplex onto the stairs, but it was blocked. And then Swerve dove at him, but he moved, and Swerve flew headfirst into the stairs. And then Nick Plain gave Swerve the Cody cutter on the floor, and Christian hit his finish on him in the ring and got a 2 count. And I wish at some point they would have started chanting, overbooking. Overbooking. So Nana comes out and chases Nick off with a lead pipe. Christian clears off the announce desk. Swerve gives Christian the double stomp on the desk, which looked great. There were a lot of things in here that looked good, but nothing hurts anybody anymore. Christian went for a spear, Swerve hit a kick and hit another kick and went to the top and gave him the double stomp and then hit another kick and pinned him 1, 2, 3. And we were 4 hours into this show. I hate to gloss over the world title match, but by that point, what the fuck? Besides the fact there was nothing left to do, everything they did was fine. But also, I'm goddamn tired of watching people fall down. What more can we say?
I've been sick of this feud. I just hope it's over.
Well, I don't know. I think he still has to get even with Nick Wayne's mom. She's got the most heat, and she's the biggest member of the group. Propping my eyelids open with thumbtacks and fucking toothpicks, I was able to watch the last match on this marathon event. Assholes in the Arena. The Lollipop Guild versus Team AEW. So let's just give these people's names, because we want to make sure we know who was responsible for this. You had Maddie and Nikki, the Buckaroos. You had their friend O'Cody, and then their other friend Jungle Jackoff. And they were taking on the formerly best tag team in the world, now reduced to flunkies, FTR, and Bryan Danielson, who the people still love no matter what kind of shit he's in. And bless his little pea-picking heart, Darby Allin has come back from the dead because Kingston was hurt. And so Darby was wearing a face mask to protect his broken nose, but the face mask had thumbtacks on it. Because we can't be allowed to forget for a second that all these guys dream of being indie mud show jackoffs instead of major superstars on television. So thumbtacks, because it's cool. During the last member of the heel team's entrance, which was Jungle Jackoff, the babyfaces just attacked everybody on the floor, except for Darby, because his music was playing and then he just ran in and joined it with the face mask. And then the music kept playing when the heels took over. And then at the same time as this is supposed to be the top angle in the company and all the main event people in a violent match and a violent feud, the Buckaroos have to do their comedy to make sure that nobody takes anything seriously. So Maddie gets on the microphone and says, "Cut the music and play a banger. Our new theme music." And they start playing that. And some people are fighting. It's a sloppy fight on the floor, and some people are fighting and some are walking. And then Brian says, "Turn that shit off and play the greatest theme music ever." And then they play the final countdown that Tony paid however much money to play on it while the fight continues. They're in the stands. It's not lit. The cameras can't catch half of it. Some guys are in the breezeway. Some are in the people. It's at one point they did a 4-box to show 4 different groups of action, but they had 2 different shots of the same 2 guys in 2 of the boxes. And Darby did a coffin drop off the bleachers onto some guys. And the song was great, and the people were loving it. And they were waving their arms, and they're singing along. But meanwhile, as soon as Maddie then gets the fucking microphone again and tells them to cut that music because we're over budget, it's costing too much. When the music cuts off, it's just a sloppy fucking fight, and the people start chanting, "We want music, we want music." I said earlier, this is the biggest mess I've ever seen as a match or a television product. Because they couldn't follow it, they couldn't shoot it. It was a mess. And it was a slow, sloppy fight everywhere but the ring. And then Jackoff and Darby go to the back parking lot and fight in a tub of ice water and use a fake lead pipe. And that Danielson goes for a dive on O'Cody, but O'Cody swings a chair at him and missed him. And he was flying at him. How'd he fucking miss him? And then one of the Jacksons had to go grab a chair and hit him with it to make up for it. And then back in the parking lot, Jungle Jackoff drives a big, like, bread delivery truck with his painted scapegoat into a pile of trash and wooden pallets that we are supposed to be led to believe that Darby was under. Even though we never saw that happen. The announcers are speculating about it. And then Jungle Jackoff is knocked out in the front seat. And come to find out later, of course, the secret was out apparently hours after the show was over. He was knocked out so he could be prepared for his return. More on this in a minute. Then O'Cody was moving around like a senior citizen, beating up FTR by himself. Stoop-shouldered, no physique, lack of charisma, pale fucking fishy body, broken down, shitty haircut.
Jesus Christ, I thought you hated Nia Jax.
Well, Cody's even worse. He's not hurting. He can't. His shit couldn't hurt anybody. It's so weak. He could jump up and down on me with both feet, and I wouldn't notice it. So then Darby staggers back to the ring, apparently from being run over by a truck, and fights O'Cody and gets 2 counts on him. But then the Buckaroos powerbomb him onto a bunch of chairs and drag him to the stage and put him on the elevating platform that they make their entrance on. And they're telling production by yelling into the camera, take him down, take him down. And the production people, they're playing the music or cutting the music when they say, and they do the thing where they take him down on the elevator. There are logic holes, plot holes, whatever you want to call them, in this thing big enough to goddamn get Tony Khan's fucking checkbook through.
Yeah, there's the biggest one, Tony Khan. They establish he's sitting at Gorilla. He's running production. How come he let all this happen?
Yes, he's paying he's paying the fucking elevator guy. He can't say, don't do that. So then they all fight in the back, and they beat Danielson up, and Spike pile drive him on a poker chip. A big wooden poker chip, and then O'Cody put Cash Wheeler through a table. Immediately after, Nikki dove off the tunnel and put Dax through a table. And then Jungle Jackoff wanders into Gorilla and sees Tony sitting there at the monitor. So again, who is telling who how to produce this show? And then Jackoff grabs Tony and starts dragging him out. And you can also tell that somehow old Jungle Boy looks like he's come through a goddamn bucket of Vaseline. He's shining. All of him, he's shining.
Well, he had been thrown into an ice bucket earlier.
No, he's shining with fucking thick goddamn shit on him. He ain't wet. He's greasy. And I'm not talking about the normal grease either that he has on him. And as well as the normal cheesiness. So then all of a sudden they cut to a shot on the stage and there's everybody doing nothing. Heels and baby faces kind of waiting for what they're supposed to see next. And the announcers are saying, well, where is Tony and Perry? Where are they? Well, they couldn't do anything until Darby came out with the flamethrower. And then here comes Jungle Jackoff dragging Tony. And as he pushes Tony down on the stage, and we'll talk about what happened to Tony later because at least it wasn't on camera. But he shoves Tony Khan down on the stage, does jungle jack off, and Darby takes the flamethrower and lights him on fire. They put the stuntman movie gel on him so that it supposedly doesn't burn your skin within a certain amount of time. And they lighted him on fire with a flamethrower. And then suddenly there's Maddie and Nikki with the goddamn fire extinguishers putting him out. Can you imagine anybody stupid enough not only to be lit on fire, but to have the Jackson boys be the ones to stand by to save you?
You knew something was coming when, I don't know what you thought, but those fire extinguishers really stood out when all of a sudden they were there at the side of the stage.
Well, yes, it looked like they were goddamn, ready for the fucking fires after the San Francisco earthquake. They were going to set the whole building on fire. They were prepared. And then the crew jumps on him with towels, putting him the rest of the way out. Well, then the Buckaroos and Darby go to the ring and do some shit. And Darby kicks O'Cody in the balls, and Coffin drops O'Cody also in the nuts. Right on his fucking dick. Coffin dropped him. And the Bucks made the save, and then the Bucks called to the ceiling for a hook. And they lower a hook with a rope. Whoever's in production, go ahead.
Can I say something here? Because I don't know if you saw it. I think it may have been on the pre-show, but it was the first thing I thought about here. They had Dr. Martha Hart on this show.
Oh, no.
To announce the Owen Hart tournament for men and women coming up. Because what they said, and they made sure to note that Tony and her talked about it in December, but the winners of the two tournaments will get title shots at Wembley Stadium.
Oh, yeah, well, I forgot to mention that earlier because it's just coincidental that they say that just one day after Triple H announces that for King of the Ring getting the title matches at SummerSlam, but they talked about it in December.
My point, though, is Dr. Martha Hart is there.
In the building while they're going to hang a goddamn wrestler.
While guys who are not trained rig professionals or whatever the fuck you need to be are operating this thing, hanging this guy upside down. Even though it wasn't terribly high up, it was high enough that he could have broken his neck.
Well, it was high up enough that he was upside down and immobilized, and if something had happened and he'd have dropped on his head from 10 feet, wouldn't that pretty much break your neck? He wasn't able to catch himself. He was all tied up and hooked and everything.
If you're going to have Martha Hart on these shows, don't do things like that. That seems in pretty bad taste.
Well, besides that, then if they lower the hook, but before they hang him, the crowd is just staring while they're tying his legs together, but then FTR makes a comeback on him, but then Maddie hits Dax with a chair, and the chair exploded. Again, for what? It's like the exploding tennis shoe they had. For what? And then they got a little more slow heat on Darby until O'Cody put a sleeve of thumbtacks on his arm and hit Cash with the weakest clothesline I've ever seen. And then O'Cody pulls out a shoebox of these new ridiculous Fruit Loop looking fucking shoes in all kinds of neon colors that the Buckaroos are trying to goddamn peddle. And they've got thumbtacks on the soles of them. And they put the shoes on, and then Matt tells the production to raise Darby upside down like the piñata so they can double super kick him with the thumbtack shoes. Brian, I know a lot of people are thinking I'm now lying. Am I lying about any of this?
No, all of this happened multiple times in the middle of this brawl. The Bucks just started giving stage commands.
And then they went to kick Danielson, but Danielson grabbed the shoe and pulled off one of the tack shoes and hit the Bucks with it, and then kicked them a bunch, and then stomped them, and then gave them chair shots, and then the fans start chanting, "Please help Darby! Please help," because he's just hanging there. And then after all this, the Buckaroos stop Danielson and give him the knee lift And Jungle Jackoff comes back in from being set on fire. And as Danielson is crawling over to help Darby, or try to help Darby, Jungle Jackoff runs over and hits him with a knee lift and pins him. The guy who got set on fire came back to win the match. This right here, and everybody involved in it, and Tony Khan, who was involved in it, are the reasons why AEW will never get better. It will never turn a profit. It will never get a mainstream audience. It will continue to lose viewers instead of gaining viewers. And it will continue to be a place where people go to spend most of their time collecting a check for being hurt and operated on. It was embarrassing to anybody who's ever been a professional in this industry and gave a shit about it. And it took 4 hours and 32 minutes for him to get finished with this fucking dreck. I don't know what else to say. Everybody involved in this should be ashamed of themselves if they willingly went along with it. And if they were forced to because a member of their family was being held hostage, I'll let them off with a warning.
I don't think anyone's embarrassed. I think when you go to work with AEW and go to work with those specific people, you kind of take on the Young Bucks ethos, which is do whatever you want. Anyone who criticizes what you do or tells you to think about it a different way, they are the enemy. They are wrong. And this is what you get. We've had now a few Anarchy in the arenas. The crowds get smaller and smaller, and they got a nice crowd here for this. And I believe it was smaller than the previous time they had been there.
But it's good for what they've been doing lately.
And again, they're doubling down on the stuff with the Bucks. The Bucks were on the NBA show the other day giving out custom championship belts to the host of the show, from what I understand.
Can you imagine when they are introduced on a mainstream television show as any kind of professional wrestlers, what people sitting at home go, what the fuck?
It looks like a Saturday Night Live skit. It looks like two of the guys on Saturday Night Live put on some facial hair, glued it to their face, and are pretending to be wrestlers.
The Sammy Hagar impersonator from Madison Square Garden back in 1986.
Yeah, that's a very good reference there. And then Jack Perry. It's important to note, whatever you think of Jack Perry and his stupid decisions and his stupid attitude, and even before that, we know stories about Jungle Stooge. I mean, there's other things.
Yeah. He's a little weasel who goes crying to his fucking big brothers.
Whether that's all there or not, the fact that Tony Khan saw this guy, rumor has it, doing this gimmick, the scapegoat, on a New Japan show in Chicago, and was like, oh my God, I can't believe how great this is. And now they gave him the win here. There's another example of investing time, energy, push, wins, and Danielson will lose to anyone, so it's not really that big a deal at this point. But still, Jack Perry, he's tiny. He's not convincing.
He's not only tiny and not convincing, it's embarrassing. Because unconvincing doesn't cover it. He's obviously, like the other two, playing wrestler, acting like something he's not. They envision themselves as something they are not. They were helped along in this delusion and some element of mass hypnosis for the general public by the little bubble of indie fans that they had for a while. Fads never last. And the elite was the hula hoop and the pet rock. And the only one that it lasted with was Tony Khan. And now it's 5 years past its fucking expiration date. And he's still stuck with these morons as the stars of his company. Which is, again, you could have predicted this 5 years ago, which is why I did. Who he was sold on getting into business with was going to be the one half of his downfall, Tony's, and the other half was going to be he thought he could do this shit despite never having done it before, and now has proven he can't. He can write checks, and his dad can make a lot of money. And as long as they want to spend it, then they'll be around. But this is not good, and it's getting worse, and nobody can claim differently. And, they said, like you said, they said the video game was going to be the difference maker in profit and loss. And the video game, and now I guess now you can play it for free on certain streaming services. Is this what I'm hearing?
In June, PlayStation has a program, PlayStation Plus, where each month you get free games. Usually they're not brand new games. They're games that have been out for a while. They've exhausted their run. I've gotten some great games. I'm a subscriber. I'm going to be able to get Fight Forever finally without paying for it. And Fight Forever is now there. This comes off us seeing that it was being sold for $3 in stores.
$3 discount bin at Walmart.
That was after we saw it was $10. Which was after it was $30. I think it launched at $60, and there's no one playing the game online.
And so now the rights renewal, so they're expecting a TV network that doesn't live and die with wrestling, doesn't have to, if they're willing to give up the NBA because it's too much money, and other people are willing to pay more, then they're certainly willing to give up wrestling if they can't get it for the price they want. And does anybody, are these people stupid enough to think, I'm talking about the AEW fans, that, well, they didn't get the NBA, so now they'll give that NBA money to Tony? No, you can buy the best hooker on fucking Bourbon Street for $5,000 doesn't mean you're going to give a goddamn crack whore in a trailer the same $5,000. So when the rights fee comes in, we'll just keep the same deal, or maybe a small increase, or maybe we'll give you less because your ratings are down. Then, like I said before, what's he going to do? Say, well, fuck you. I'll just put it on YouTube. Because who else is interested in wrestling these days when it's not the number one wrestling, and the numbers for the program that exists on a major network are going down? How does that call for a raise?
Well, real quick before we wrap things up, and that was AEW Double or Nothing, but Jim...
It certainly was. I'm sorry with my attitude today, but having to sit through, especially over the past couple of days, and then having to spend 4.5 hours of my time on that, I was somewhat verklempt.
But Jim, it has come out now. We're talking about the rights renewal for AEW. Brandon Thurston tweeted this out. This is from Puck's Matt Baloney. I believe he's a sports media reporter of some renown or not. Who knows? But here's what he said. Quote, I'm told the exclusive window closes in July, and AEW leader Tony Khan is said to be disappointed with the offer currently on the table. Khan also surely knows that David Zaslav, losing the NBA would give AEW more leverage, even though the money to re-up AEW is a mere drop in the NBA bucket. If the window closes without a deal, others could swoop in for those rights, as Comcast has done with the NBA. Extra awkward, because Warner Brothers Discovery is said to own a stake in the league. I'm not sure how alluring AEW would be to another platform, especially since only non-WWE partners could bid. But the wrestling shows still do okay on the Turner networks. It's reliable programming, and a rival suitor could further push Zaslav into hot water in his cable carriage deals.
I don't see a lot of other comparable, or very many, or any other comparable networks with comparable exposure and brand name and cachet in the industry wanting not only the distant second wrestling promotion, but also to want that shit on their airwaves, the barbed wire and the blood and the goofiness and the amateurishness.
See, the thing is, Tony Khan right now is a pretty fair deal. Because of that deal and because of, well, not really because of that deal, it's a very good deal. Because of the expenditures, because of things like the video game, because of guys making 6 figures and barely being used, or
7 figures,
or their value has been completely minimized. Yeah, I mean, the Bucks are making 7 figures. Are they worth it? No, but they're getting it. There's lots of other guys getting a lot of money.
Yeah, what you're saying is they could be profitable now if this was run like a business with just the money they're getting.
Right, which gets into this thing because the problem is Tony Khan set this up in everyone's mind. From Dave Meltzer on down. From the very beginning of AEW, we got this deal because this is valuable real estate and we intend to get a big rights renewal, a massive rights renewal when the time comes. And that's where we are right now. Can you imagine if you went into a bar and you saw the hottest girl you've ever seen, and in your head you're like, man, I got to find a way to go talk to her and get her to want to get to know me. You don't then go to her friends and go, hey, I'm going to fuck the shit out of your friend. I plan on fucking the shit out of her. It'll take me a little while, but I'm going to fuck the shit out of her. No. That's why Tony announcing all this out loud from the beginning was stupid. Because AEW has a fair deal right now. When you hear that Tony's not happy about the deal, we'll address that in a moment, it's because he thinks he deserves a major rights increase, and he doesn't.
Because he decided that it was going to happen. Just like from the start, he decided he was going to take over, and Vince was a flunky, was a mere pittance, that this was going to be the greatest wrestling of all time, and he knew how to do this. He was convinced.
And you could try to present any kind of number you can to, fancy things up. Look at how good we do it here. Look at how good we do there. But key demos down, overall numbers down. Overall number keeps shrinking. Key demos catching up to the overall number. Dynamite's catching up to Collision, which is catching up to Rampage.
Which is catching up to test patterns.
I agree with what this guy Matt Baloney, who is quoted here, said.
I think he's full of baloney.
It's cheap programming. It's reliable, cheap programming. If you could deal with the content, you're not paying very much to have it on your air every week. Problem is, Tony can't be profitable unless he gets a big rights increase. And again, at that point, it's important to note, we're still basing everything we know around what Tony lets people know. It's a private company. We don't know what the numbers really are. Tony likes to make everything sound a lot better than it really is. But what have you seen that would cause them to get a rights increase? And if they lose the NBA is the kind of thing that networks or streaming services or whatever will lose money on because of having the NBA and everything that does. It's a rainmaker. It brings people into the door. If you lose that, yeah, they've got more money. First of all, that's the sports division, not the entertainment division. And who knows what happens to the future of that sports division without the NBA. It's not like the network's just like, okay, the NBA's gone. We got a few $1 billion. How can we spend it across the network?
They might not have that few $1 billion because the NBA is big enough to affect the carriage fees that the networks get from the cable systems, but AEW is not.
Right.
So if TBS is worth $5 a head because they got the NBA, maybe without it, they're worth $4 a head. These are made up numbers, but you see where I'm going. And then that means that they are paying less money out because they don't have the NBA, but they're taking less money in because they don't have the NBA.
And it's important to note everyone's assuming that TNT's out, that Warner Brothers Discovery's out, that the NBA is going to go to a streaming service. They can have a deal somewhere else. That's not done yet. That's not official.
But a lot of people saying it.
But if they come back in and they have to pay even more than they expected to keep the NBA because it's that important, like you said, you just gave incredible, valid reasons. Who knows how much extra money there'll be at that point? It's not like it's going to be, okay, we're paying more for the NBA, so now there's more for you too. No, that's not how it works.
Now we're paying more for the same thing that we had that we have to have, so we got to cut back on some of the frivolous expenditures.
AEW has nothing but frivolous expenditures. And they could be profitable right now, and they're not. For Tony Khan's roster reasons.
Does that mean that Tony Khan is a roster-farian?
If they want to continue and not lose as much money as they've been losing, they need to somehow get that company into some sort of realistic financial setting, because you're not going to get a massive increase multiple times over. You'll be lucky if you get, I don't want to put a number on it, but you're not going to get a big increase. You're not going to get the video game to all of a sudden do well. It's now being given away for free.
Well, now, wait a minute. If a lot of people discover how much fun it is because they can play it for free, won't they go out and spend $30 or $40 on it?
On what? The game they already have for free?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Oh.
They'll have to wait for the next game to come out, which will never come out, because why would they ever do another fucking game?
And at this rate, it would be Boston's third album anyway. It'd take 5 years.
So that's the point. And, again, too, you look at Ring of Honor. Tony never got a TV deal for Ring of Honor. He says it was because he was loyal to TBS. It seems to be a one-sided thing. They didn't say, hey, you bought this Ring of Honor, you better not put it anywhere. That's not what we've heard. Tony wanted to be loyal to them and not put it anywhere, which is a nice way of saying he didn't have anywhere to really put it. Although we did hear didn't they turn down, where's NXT going?
CW.
Channel 11, yeah.
WB.
That's right.
Whatever it is these days. I mean, can you imagine? They may have just, if they'd gotten on CW, they would have probably just pissed off another network into not want another wrestling program, because however much we take to task the AEW program, it's the big brother of the Ring of Honor program that also Tony's responsible for. So it would be the same bad wrestling with even smaller names.
Well, Jim,
that network would not be happy. But go ahead.
Jim, I have a report here from the Wrestling Observer newsletter site. AEW denies disappointment with first WBD TV rights renewal offer by Josh Nason. AEW has denied a Monday night report from Puck that the first offer made by WBD towards a new TV rights deal was disappointing. According to Dave Meltzer, AEW sources have told him that the first offer was not disappointing to Tony Khan.
I wonder what sources those are.
Who's that source? But that the two sides have yet to reach any deal. Negotiations for both TV and streaming are ongoing with WBD and not TNT Sports. The Puck report from longtime Hollywood insider Matt Baloney, then it goes into what it said here. He also reported that WBD head David Zasloff and TNT Sports head Luis Silberwasser want to keep all 3 AEW shows. After the reporting came out, it was pointed out by some online that Baloney is longtime friends with WWE CEO Nick Khan.
Uh-oh.
And that Baloney has had Khan on his podcast before, leading some to believe it was a planted piece. WWE met with WBD.
Either that or that means he's got a lot of inside information.
That means that's what Tony said. If that's here, after the source already said, Tony wasn't disappointed at all, and all of a sudden the other source was Tony, who's completely paranoid about anyone who's ever had any relationship with Nick Khan. We saw that with, what's his name, Ariel Helwani. All of a sudden, he's had him on his podcast before, leading some to believe it was a planted piece. WWE met with WBD during their TV rights negotiations, which Tony Khan said was part of sports. When asked about it, their current deal is believed to expire at the end of this year.
Well, anybody that knows Nick Khan, it probably has more inside information than most jackoffs, because Nick Khan, I would assume, in his position, knows everything that there needs to be known about any major television moves of wrestling promotions anywhere. Don't you? As soon as goddamn things are said in confidence among these high muckety-muck television executives?
I think if you go back, I guess, at least 15 years, Nick Khan is probably as knowledgeable as anyone in the field about not just wrestling, but any sports, television deals, media deals, anything. Before WWE, he was an agent. He represented a lot of people, and agents know what other agents are doing. They have to stay in touch with the marketplace. So he may know more than anyone about the TV landscape. And again, he's still in the field. He's still out there. And we've heard him openly mock Tony Khan, who's just a few years younger than him, just like 3 or 4 years younger than him. And they called him the kid.
The kid.
But he put over his dad. He said his dad is a real nice guy, but the kid, we don't take him seriously.
Well, you can't. You can't. These are big-time fucking people in the WWE hierarchy now. Major Hollywood fucking movers and shakers and executives and successful business people. And you've got fucking hippity hop down here, having his spasms and hugging people. They can't take it seriously, and they see that sooner or later this thing could bankrupt Shad Khan if it was allowed to go on long enough, and they know that it won't be. Because as much as he loves his son, he's not going to be living in a box under the overpass for the sake of Tony having a wrestling company.
I don't think he has to worry about that. He makes a lot of money from that patent, don't it?
Well, that's sooner or later. You can't tell me that he's making more money right now than Tony is losing. I'm sure he's got a big bank account, and I'm sure he makes a lot of money, but can he be making it as fast as Tony is losing it over the last 4 or 5 years?
Multiple times over, yes.
Good Lord. For a car bumper?
One that everyone who is going to sell that kind of car would ever need to use, yeah. And you couldn't try to get around it because he has the patent.
You know what? I ought to invent.
And then since that time, he bought every sporting team that his son had any interest in. And look at how that's gone.
I ought to invent something that people can't do without.
Well, easier said than done. You have any ideas?
Well, I just had the idea to do it. So I'll have to get back with you on what I'm actually going to do. But it'll be something that everybody needs.
Well, we will see if David Zaslav gets back to us on what he needs to do. But this is your show. Let me turn it back over to you.